Thanks, Mitch. You know, team leaders, particularly those who get a chance to be on a world championship team and taking any credit for it, is sort of like the Rooster taking credit for the sunrise. I was just sort of glad I was outside at the time, you know. And I was particularly gratified to be part of this team. It was an extraordinary group of young people, and really an extraordinary group of young people who were coached by an extraordinary group of men, who over a period really of decades helped build the Greco-Roman program to be what it is today. It doesn't happen overnight, and many of you in the room are part of that legacy. But you're right, Mitch. I have a little bit of history, at least in terms of the same location, growing up, a lot of similarities in terms of background with Lindsay. T.C. Dantzler, of course, Joe Betterman. It was kind of an interesting Chicago contingency for that year. It was a lot of fun. And then the Quadrennium was an amazing experience. I first of all have to acknowledge Coach Frazier. Steve is the best overall coach I've been around. And the reason for that is not only is he sound technically, he knows how to bring in the right people, but I've never seen anybody love his athletes and show it the right way more than Steve Frazier. Steve Frazier is a national treasure when it comes to coaching in this country at the Olympic level. Steve, I really appreciate you a lot. And iron sharpens iron, right? Having Momir and Anatoly and Steve as Olympic champion and Momir as Olympic champion around these young people really gave them confidence and built them, and that was true of Lindsay. You know, when I think about Lindsay, there are so many funny stories to tell, but this guy was a Jewish warrior. Okay, and when you go to high school, you don't really have that many like Jewish warriors, right? There's a lot of very Jewish, smart chemistry class guys and accounting guys and guys going to law school and the entertainment industry. But Lindsay was truly a Jewish warrior, and I said at his service in Chicago, it reminded me a lot of King David. He did it his own way. The story of the Bible about King David wanting to come and take on Goliath because nobody in Israel would do it. This guy was 10 feet tall. The head of his spear weighed 20 pounds. And they tried to put Saul's armor on. Saul was 6'5", put the helmet on. King David said, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit me. And furthermore, who is this idiot who thinks he can threaten the people of God? He goes, I'm going to go out there and kill him. There wasn't any question about what he was going to do. He walked out there, hit him with a slingshot, knocked him out, cut his head off. The Philistines ran away. And Lindsay Durlacher had, without question, the spirit of that warrior in him. And while it is true we've lost him in this life, those of us who are Christian and those of you who might be Jewish or of another faith, in our world, we believe that the branch will be grafted to the vine again, and I'm looking forward to seeing this dude again because he left way too early, and I had a couple of jokes to tell him. We used to exchange jokes all the time. He was a very funny guy, but he had called me a week before. He was going to the hospital for surgery and told me of his plans, and he's going to come back home with his brothers and open a wrestling center, and just great to be around. And asked if I was willing to get involved, and I said yes, and he was very proud of his experience in the Maccabea Games, and explained that he'd won something like 9 gold medals, and they wouldn't let him in the games anymore because he was killing everybody, but he did get a chance to carry the flag, and these were really special things to him, and they were part of his heritage, and this was true of an athlete whose competitive career was winding down. But Lindsay was part of a very, very special group of athletes in the 2005 to 2008 Quadrennium. And if you think about that group of athletes, they did something that no teams had ever done before. And in 2006, I would tell you, in my opinion, the 2006 team, from an athlete perspective, was the best Greco-Roman team we've ever had. We've had some great ones, but it was just loaded. And if you look at the Quadrennium, we placed and medaled in every weight class during that Quadrennium, which was an amazing thing. And that all happened on the backs of many of the previous great athletes, some of them who are in the room now, who really helped build the program and teach these kids, give them confidence, and Coach Frazier's plans and teaching kids what it takes to become a champion, the sacrifices that are required. But this group of people was truly amazing. And in 2006, Lindsay won the bronze, of course, and Justin won the bronze, and Joe Warren was world champion. And I would tell you something about that. Joe Warren at that time was unbeatable. And there are times, and I've been around the sport a long time, there are periods of time where certain athletes at the peak of their career, some of them go longer, some of them go shorter. Buvesi Satif is one of them. Okay, Joe Warren for a 3-year period of time was one of them. He was unbeatable. And that radiated through our team. We knew that if Joe was going out on the mat, he was winning. And if he was winning, we were winning. And in 2006, the Russians Ended up having a surprising thing happen at the end of the tournament. In wrestling the Cubans at super heavyweight, Lopez ends up getting tech fault by the Russian. And I've never seen this guy, no one on our team has ever seen this guy as much as gut-wrenched. But we knew something was up. Didn't make any sense, and frankly that world title should have been ours that year because we had the best team and I think we had the best athletes. So 2007 rolls around, we're getting ready to go into 2007, and we have a great team. We're getting ready to go to the Pan American Games, and we are on fire. And great teams love each other, right? It's not just about how good everyone is. There's a closeness on great teams. And if you ever get a chance to be near it, and I have the privilege of being near it with this team, something that I will take to my grave is the love that this group of young men have for each other and the relationship that they have with their coaches. There's just something special about great teams, and you know where you're at when you're there. And here we are at George Mason University getting ready to go to the Pan American Games. And we're on fire. We're loaded. We know we're ready to go win. We know we're ready to go do what we have to do. I take off, go to Atlanta, and in between Atlanta and Washington, D.C., we lose Joe Warren to the team. And that was devastating to us. Joe was the heart and soul, the power of our capacity to win. We had a lot of great athletes on the team, no question about it, but Joe was just the best guy in the world, no question about it at that point in time. And so it goes to show you how quickly things can change. And we go down to Rio de Janeiro. We're late because the Brazilian radar falls out. Our guys have to go back. It takes them 36 hours to get there. We've got something like 16 hours to cut our weight, which is crazy. Harry barely makes weight. Justin barely makes weight, rather. And just as in typical fashion, I like to call him Harry, in typical fashion for Justin, he goes out there barely making weight, looks like death warmed over. He draws the Olympic bronze medal, the world bronze medalist from Cuba in the first round and destroys him. Literally destroys him, beats the living daylights out of him in the last point, throws him off the mat. And that was just classic, because in my opinion, and on that team, Justin Harry Lester was the best wrestler in the United States at any weight class. I always felt that if you gave him 2 weeks, he could try for the freestyle team, he'd make it. He was just that good. And so I'm really glad to see that he's back, because to fulfill his destiny as an Olympic champion, I think is something that he deserves and something that this program deserves. But as it turns out, in 2007, we're just not the same team because we don't have Joe, but Joe Betterman steps in just like the champ that he is. He's a couple of years ahead of himself at that point in time, but a tough-minded guy. T.C. Dantzler goes out in the first round, and he has a terrible draw. He draws the defending world champion in the first round from Bulgaria and beats him. Critical points. And everybody, piece by piece by piece, steps up and plays their role. Wins matches. Lindsay is not at his best in that tournament. I don't think he felt that good. I thought he was a little bit hurt. But in still coming back for 5th place, that was critical to us. His mental toughness. He was just not feeling great. But he just went out there and ground and swung and fought and swung and fought. And there was no question that our leading wrestler in that tournament for us was Brad Barring. Brad was our spiritual leader. He was the guy that stepped up and not only grounded out, but he won, and you probably saw a couple of clips at those matches. Brad won with fury. He was ready to be a world champion and a world medalist and an Olympic champion. He was ready. It was his time. And clearly, we drafted off of his back, even though the team had lost its defending world champion. And here we are, going into the final round with Jamil Byers wrestling for the bronze medal. And 2 things have to happen. Brad wins the gold, we win. Jamil wins the bronze, and the Cuban, Lopez, beats the Russian, and we win. We're nervous now. We don't know what's going to happen. Brad's got the defending Olympic champion. He's wrestling great. But one of the things that we realize is probably going to happen is the Russians are going to take another run at Lopez again. And I'm standing with Rich Bender and Frage, and the only thing we can do is do our best to hang around and try to provide some deterrent to the Russians, which it ends up being my job to do because I have no basic function. And so, you know, if it were Chicago or New York or the United States where I could get a plane ticket or call a cop, it would feel better for some reason. But the daunting idea of having the Russian mob and Baku, Azerbaijan standing outside the door of a guy who's 6'5" and could kill me with his pinky finger if he got mad at me was not that exciting. But anyway, in the end, that was my job, and we walked out with Lopez to the mat. Turns out Jamil wins the match against the French athlete, gets the bronze medal, and Lopez beats the Russian. And here we are, just isn't it true, and just like this in sports, right? You go from your lowest of lows, toughest of tough moments, and you're staring down the barrel of glory. Here we are. We're world champions. And Lindsey Durlacher is the first guy to lead the parade. He immediately jumps forward, runs, and leaps into the arms of Lopez. You know, thank God Lopez caught him. And I'll never forget Coach Frazier because it was his style and his way. And everybody knew it was. It was his transparent way of being himself. He just broke down in tears. As did everybody else at that point in time. And one of the great memories that I have of Baku, Azerbaijan was Anatoly Petrosian's first time back in his hometown. 30 years, Anatoly? 30 years. 20 years. And you know what Anatoly did, just in his very special style? He didn't go talk to a specific person or go to a restaurant. He went and found his favorite tree, and he hugged it. And we have a picture of Anatoly hugging that tree because it was a tree that you grew up around. It was a pretty special time. A lot of interesting things came together. So in the end, history was made by a group of young men and great coaches who were committed to each other, committed to never quitting and to never giving up. And Lindsey Durlacher, in my mind, epitomized that. We call him the Jewish Elvis, Juice. But the one thing we knew about Lindsey is he was on fire to win. And if you stood between him and that victory, you were going to have a fight on your hands. And this guy was full of life. And life is a beautiful thing, and I hope that we all get to see him again one day. But because of Lindsey Durlacher, because of Steve Frazier, because of T.C. Densler, and Brad Baring, and Dramil Bios, and Justin Ruiz, and Adam Wheeler, and all the great ones that came before, on whose shoulders this program stands today, we were able to win the first team title in the history of our country. And today, less than 60 people carry this ring. And when I look at that ring, I think of that team, and I think of the people who went before us that made it possible. And I can tell you this, I will carry that to my grave, along with the memory of each of you. And for that, I say thank you, and God bless Lindsey Durlacher. And I have one last thing, and that is, I had hoped that on the Quadrennium anniversary of our team victory in September of 2007, which was going to be this September, I had saved something for a long time for each of the team members, and that was I had contacted the White House, and President Bush had written a letter to each of the team members, which I was going to give to each of the team members in this format, which I now will do later. And sadly, I'm giving this early, but this is for you, Mike and Dave, and your family. And it's a letter from the President of the United States recognizing the team world title, and a picture of Lindsay holding the trophy, and then, of course, all the great athletes who are on that team with him. So thank you, and God bless you, and we're with you. And you know what? It's a long life ahead of us. We'll be friends forever in His spirit, right? So thank you.